serial killers are some of the most notorious and reviled murderers in world history. From ancient times to the modern day, they have been known to commit some of the most heinous acts of murder. Welcome to the Spectacular Top 7. This is what we are covering today. In this video, we will explore 7 of the most known serial killers in world history and examine their deadly acts of murder. We will look at how many people they killed, the methods they used, and some of the more interesting facts about each of them. Ted Bundy. The notorious serial killer Ted Bundy has killed as many as 30 people. Although the exact number is still unknown, he is known for targeting women in the 1970s, particularly college-aged women. Bundy would typically abduct his victims by pretending to be injured or disabled, luring them into his car, and then restraining them with handcuffs. Once restrained, he would sexually assault and murder his victims before disposing of the body. In some cases, he would also perform necrophilia on the corpses. Bundy's victims ranged in age from 12 to 35 years old and came from a variety of backgrounds. He was eventually executed in 1989 after a long trial, although his execution failed to bring any closure to the families of his victims. Jeffrey Dahmer. One of the most notorious serial killers of all time, Jeffrey Dahmer committed a total of 17 gruesome murders throughout his criminal career. He is known to have killed men and boys between the ages of 14 and 35, with most of his victims being African American. In addition to homicide, Dahmer was also charged with multiple counts of rape, dismemberment, necrophilia, and cannibalism. Many of Dahmer's victims were murdered in his apartment, and some of them were even drugged with drugs like Valium and chloroform before being killed. The remains of his victims were typically dismembered and then disposed of, with some parts being preserved in acid or stored in his refrigerator. John Wayne Gacy. John Wayne Gacy is one of the most notorious and terrifying serial killers in history. He was active from 1972 to 1978 and is known to have killed at least 33 young males. Gacy primarily targeted teenage boys and young men who he lured to his home with the promise of odd jobs. Once in his home, he would strangle them to death and then bury their bodies in the crawl space of his house or dispose of them in a nearby river. He was eventually convicted for his crimes and sentenced to death, with the execution carried out in 1994. His victims ranged in age from 14 to 21 and came from diverse backgrounds, showing how many people he killed throughout his time as a killer. Gary Ridgway. Known as the Green River Killer, Gary Ridgway was one of the most prolific serial killers in US history. He is believed to have killed as many as 71 people between 1982 and 1998 in the Washington state area. Most of his victims were young women, with some being prostitutes or runaways, and he often picked them up along the highways that ran through the area. Ridgway used various methods to kill his victims, including strangulation and stabbing. He was finally caught in 2001 after a DNA sample linked him to several of the murders. At his sentencing hearing, he pleaded guilty to 48 counts of aggravated murder, which was the most ever in American history. His plea bargain resulted in him receiving a life sentence without parole instead of facing execution. Andre Chikatilo. Andre Chikatilo is considered to be one of the most notorious serial killers in world history, having killed at least 52 people between 1978 and 1990. Chikatilo was known for targeting children and teenagers, as well as adults, mostly from vulnerable backgrounds such as the homeless, drug users, and prostitutes. He was known to lure his victims with promises of food or money before killing them in brutal and violent ways. He then disposed of their bodies in remote locations or attempted to destroy evidence by burning their remains. Despite the high number of victims, it took law enforcement over a decade to finally catch him in 1990. Pedro Alonso Lopez. Pedro Alonso Lopez, nicknamed the Monster of the Andes, is known as one of the most notorious serial killers in world history. He was born in Colombia in 1948 and began killing when he was just a young man. In total, Lopez has admitted to killing over 300 people, mostly young women and girls. He would typically target women who were alone, oftentimes raping them before killing them with objects such as rock sticks and machetes. Lopez would dump the bodies in rivers or bury them in shallow graves. For his crimes, he has been sentenced to life in prison without parole. Ed Gein. Between 1954 and 1957, Ed Gein, infamous as the Butcher of Plainfield, inflicted harm upon at least two individuals, Bernice Worden and Mary Hogan. Gein was widely considered to be one of the most dangerous individuals in history due to his penchant for decapitating victims and using their organs to fashion clothing and other items. How many people he killed beyond those two is unknown. His disturbing behavior has served as an inspiration for some of the most famous horror films, such as Psycho and The Silence of the Lambs. He died in 1984 due to respiratory failure in a psychiatric hospital. That's it for today. We hope you found our video interesting. If you did, please give it a big thumbs up and share it with others. Also, please consider subscribing to our channel. Remember to turn on the notification bell so you can see all of our new uploads. In the end, thanks for watching and see you next time.